In 2001, 50-year-old Leslie Prier lived in a 2-story brick home in the 4800 block of Drummond Avenue in Chevy Chase, Maryland, with her husband Carl. The couple's daughter, Lauren, had spent most of her childhood in this house, but the 23-year-old no longer lived at home. According to Lauren, Leslie was just as beautiful on the inside as she was on the outside, and not only was she a wonderful mother to her, she was very maternal towards all of Lauren's friends as they were growing up. On May 2, 2001, Carl left for work at around 7:30 in the morning. Leslie was also working that day. She was due in at her job at Specialties Incorporated, an advertising production company, at 10 o'clock. She never made it. When she failed to show up on time, her boss called Leslie's daughter and her husband to see if they knew where she was. Carl met his wife's boss at the home on Drummond Avenue at approximately 11:35. When they opened the door, it was immediately apparent that something was wrong. There was blood all over the foyer, a table had been knocked over, and a rug was out of place. Carl went inside to begin calling local hospitals, thinking Leslie had been taken to one. Leslie's boss called 911, and the dispatcher advised them to get out of the house. Police arrived on the scene at 11:47. When they searched the house, they discovered Leslie's body, halfway inside the shower in the master bathroom. She was face down, with her legs sticking out of the stall. Leslie's autopsy and the forensic examination of the house showed that Leslie had been killed in the foyer, not in the master bathroom. Bruising and hemorrhaging around her neck were consistent with manual strangulation, and bruises on her arms and torso indicated that she had been struck in those spots. She had 7 lacerations to her head, with corresponding marks on her skull. These injuries appear to have been inflicted as her head was slammed into the sharp baseboard molding in the foyer. Her killer had attempted to clean the crime scene, and it appeared that he had carried her body up to the shower in order to wash away blood evidence. Simply by virtue of the fact that he was married to the victim, Carl Prier was initially considered a suspect in Leslie's murder, although no evidence was ever found to tie him to the crime. Despite a large volume of evidence being collected at the scene and an extensive investigation, it would be more than 2 decades before an arrest was finally made in Leslie's case. In 2024, Leslie's daughter Lauren was 46, with a strong circle of friends and a good job. She missed her mother greatly and still had hope that the case would be solved and she would find some measure of closure. She finally received the phone call she'd been waiting 23 years for on June 18, 2024, when she was notified that a suspect had been taken into custody that day and was being charged with first-degree murder. However, any relief she felt at the news was quickly tempered by a feeling of betrayal when she was told who had allegedly killed her mother. It was someone she knew, Eugene Gore, her high school boyfriend. As a teenager, Eugene had lived near the Priers and attended Bethesda Chevy Chase High School with Lauren. They had many mutual friends and eventually fell in love. Eugene spent a lot of time in the Priers' home, regularly eating meals with Lauren and her parents. He also went on vacations with them to different beaches up and down the East Coast. Eugene's parents were going through a contentious divorce, which Lauren knew he was having a difficult time coping with. She also knew that some of his relatives had bad tempers, but she never saw any concerning behavior from him, despite his family's troubles. Leslie Prier was fond of Eugene, but Carl Prier would occasionally tell his daughter that he thought something was off with the young man. Lauren and Eugene dated for 5 years. They broke up after 2 years of their relationship being long distance because Lauren had gone away for college. The breakup was amicable and only occurred because they were both young and wanted some more freedom. Despite the important part Leslie had played during his adolescence, Eugene did not attend her funeral 3 years after his breakup with Lauren. Instead, he drove across the country to visit a friend in Portland, not telling the friend he was coming, until he had already started the drive. He ran into Lauren in a bar a few months later. She told him that her mother had died, to which he responded, "I'm so sorry." Lauren and Eugene saw each other a few times over the following years at events with their mutual friends. They last saw each other in 2019 following a memorial service for one of those friends. They had a conversation, but Leslie's murder did not come up. While Lauren was sure Eugene could not have had anything to do with her mother's murder, her father was not as certain. He had mentioned Eugene as a possible suspect a few times over the years, but Lauren had always dismissed the idea. Carl Prier passed away of septic shock in 2017, never learning that his suspicions about his daughter's ex-boyfriend were correct. The last time Lauren had been contacted about Eugene prior to his arrest had been concerning, but still had not changed her mind about him being a potential suspect in her mother's case. She had received a text message from Eugene's brother in 2021 in which he said that he was afraid Eugene was going to hurt him. She did not know what to do, and therefore did not get involved. In general, friends and co-workers have shared Lauren Prier's shock at Gore being implicated in the murder. A former co-worker told the Washington Post that he could not imagine Gore hurting a fly. Friends have described him as warm, gregarious, and zen. At work, he was known for being introspective and concerned about the culture and community of his workplace. However, at least one person, a former co-worker, noted that Gore's kind and calm exterior masked a bad temper and a superiority complex that would be revealed if Gore was ever challenged or questioned. The co-worker told the Washington Post, "Some people are receptive and warm. He does that at first when he meets everybody, but then is a giant, condescending prick." Still, this co-worker had not believed Gore to be a physically violent person. While in recent years, Gore has at least presented a more calm demeanor overall, he does have concerning behavior in his past. According to the Montgomery County Police Department, he had previously been arrested for weapons possession, driving under the influence, and theft. He is also listed as a suspect in thefts from residences and burglary in police incident reports. The dates of these offenses have not been released. None of these charges resulted in Gore being required to submit a sample of his DNA. Gore's first marriage ended in divorce in 2015. He was known to have struggled with alcohol abuse during this time. He appears to have gotten sober by 2018, by which time he was regularly talking about attending Alcoholics Anonymous meetings and recommending self-help books to coworkers. Gore remarried, and in 2021, around the time Lauren Prier received the concerning text message from his brother, his second wife filed for an order of protection against him. She alleged that he was displaying erratic and frightening behavior, punching walls and throwing objects. A Montgomery County District Court Commissioner denied her petition, stating in a court document that there was no reasonable grounds to believe that abuse, as defined in the statute, occurred. The couple later divorced. By 2024, Gore had begun dating someone new and was living a comfortable life in Washington, D.C., full of social and cultural events. On June 9th, he was in Dulles Airport to catch a flight to Europe. He opened a bottle of water, drank it, and threw it in the trash before getting on his flight. Unbeknownst to him, the bottle was collected by an investigator and tested for DNA. 9 days later, on June 18th, after he arrived home from his trip, Gore was arrested by the U.S. Marshals Task Force in Washington, D.C., because the DNA from his water bottle was a match to DNA from the crime scene. DNA evidence was available in the case because of how hard Leslie Prier had fought for her life. Unknown male DNA was found underneath her fingernails, which presumably was deposited there as she tried to fight off her killer. That DNA was a match to DNA extracted from blood found in 3 other locations throughout the crime scene: under a baseboard beneath a window in the dining room, on the kitchen doorway connected to the dining room, and on the interior side of the kitchen door. In 2022, investigators began using genetic genealogy to attempt to identify the contributor of the unknown DNA. The DNA profile from the crime scene was run through the database of Family Tree DNA, a consumer DNA testing site, which allows for use by law enforcement. This resulted in distant matches to numerous individuals, and Gore was one of the surnames that appeared in these results. When police searched their records in Leslie's case for this surname, they found a reference to Eugene Gore. He was in the file because one of his previous neighbors had called in a tip, stating that they suspected he was involved in Leslie Prier's murder, 9 months after the crime was committed. This was a neighbor who had lived near the Gores at the time of the murder, not far from the Prier home. The neighbor had contacted the police when they had learned that Eugene was connected to Leslie's daughter Lauren. Eugene and his mother had moved out of the neighborhood approximately 6 months after Leslie was killed, but prior to that, the home had regularly been visited by police due to noise complaints and underage drinking. At the time the tip was made, Gore was not interviewed, nor was a DNA sample collected from him. This overlap between the genealogical search and the case file made investigators confident that Eugene Gore could be a potential suspect, which is what led them to surreptitiously collecting his water bottle and getting a sample of his DNA, which did prove to be a match and led to his arrest. Lauren Prier was present for Gore's first court appearance, supported by 2 longtime friends she and Gore shared. Prior to the court appearance, she told journalist Emily Davies that she wanted to be there because she wanted to see Gore finally be in court, and wished she could give him a piece of her mind. Gore has waived his right to a bond hearing. He remains in custody without bond because prosecutors consider him to be a flight risk due to his frequent international travel.